In this game, there are two players who are researchers with opposite theories who are working to analyze the same data set. But throughout the game, they're each manipulating the data, trying to get it to support their theory. So this is the game board, and the data is split between a red population and a blue population. So the red researcher in the game theorizes that at the end of data analysis, the red population will be significantly greater than the blue population. And this significance means at a significance level of 4, we would look at the top 4 samples across the whole population. And if they are all red, then the red researcher wins. Or if we look at the bottom 4 samples, if they are all red, then the blue researcher would win. So throughout the game, this significance level can decrease down to 2, and the game will end when one of those conditions are met. So on each turn, a player is going to draw one card and play one card. So on red's first turn, they'll draw a card, and they'll choose one of their actions. I'll go over each of the possible actions. So let's say the red player uses the rounding error card, which can be used to increase or decrease the value of a sample by 1. So they will use this to decrease the value of a blue sample from 8 to 7. Now it's blue's turn, and they draw a new card, and they will use their outlier removal action, which allows them to remove the value of a data point and replace it with a randomly generated new sample. So they'll use this to replace the value of their lowest sample, which is now set to 5. In the top right of the screen, this indicates that of the lowest samples across the population, the red samples have the lowest one, but in terms of the highest samples, it's a tie between the red and blue populations. On red's next turn, they draw another card, and now they'll use the contaminated sample action, which will allow you to reset the value of any sample to 5. So they will be trying to get rid of the blue population's highest points, so they'll get rid of this 10 and set it down to 5. Now on blue's turn, they can use this audit action in order to reset their last sample back to 10. Now on red's turn, they can use this swap labels action. This allows them to switch the values of a red and a blue sample. So they'll choose column A, so now their value increases to 5, whereas the blue sample here decreased from 5 to 0. Now on blue's turn, let's say they want to decrease the significance threshold. So now it goes from 4 to 3, and we will only be considering the top 3 and bottom 3 samples. Red will remove an outlier. So let's say they want to reset their lowest data point, which actually gets lower. Now blue can use a rounding error card to decrease the level of one of red's samples. And maybe at this point, red also wants to decrease the significance threshold. Blue can use the rounding error action to decrease one of red's samples. Red can use a rounding error action to increase one of their samples. Let's say blue contaminates one of red's samples. And red, again, uses a rounding error to increase their lowest sample. So now the game is over because across the 2 lowest samples in the whole population, both of them are blue. So that means that the red researcher wins. Now, if the deck ran out before any of the significance conditions were met, then it'd be a null result and both players would lose. So I think this game can produce some interesting strategies. because the researchers need to decide how to best utilize their actions and in which order in order to make them the most effective. I think there's also an offensive-defensive trade-off here. So let's say the red researcher is decreasing blue's top samples. Blue could respond defensively by trying to increase those samples back to where they were, or they could be more offensive and try to decrease some of red's samples, maybe trying to trigger the significance condition on the lowest samples. This game could also be played in teams with any number of players, as long as red and blue teams alternate turns. And it could also be a co-op game with some algorithm used to determine the actions of a robot player. Thanks for watching the overview of this game, and let me know what you think.